Welcome again to another episode of the Real Deal Landman Show. We are so happy to have you here. I am Drew Hopkins. With me, as always, he's the Charlie Brown to my Linus, the Marley to my Scrooge, Mr. Jerris Johnson. Good to see you, Jerris. And we've got a fantastic guest today. But I want to kick it over to you just to kick this thing off.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. First off, you're wearing the Real Deal Landman hat, so you're trying to. I feel like we're trying to go down some sort of merch, tunnel.
Yeah. I had two of them made, and I was going to give one to you, but my wife liked it, and so she kept it. So you have 0.
It's okay. I'm writing that down as a note right now. I'll remember that for Christmas.
That's fine. Speaking of Christmas, so a few episodes back, it might have been the first one, you introduced me to the world of saying I was prone to outbursts.
I did.
And so I'm going to live true to it right now. Like, I've got something, I don't know. It's one of those days I'm like feeling super agitated. And so when I'm agitated, like everything is a pet peeve. And I figured we're coming up on Christmas. What a better time to really show people who I am. And so I'm going to launch into a little bit of a rant on Christmas music.
Okay. We'll take it.
Okay. So
what's your problem with it?
So I don't necessarily have a problem with Christmas music per se. What I do have a problem with is winter songs that are called Christmas music. So like the song Wonderland, that's not a Christmas song. It's a song about winter. I mean, why did they stop playing it on December 26th?
I mean, wouldn't you say that it was created almost as a Christmas? It feels very Christmassy.
Baby, It's Cold Outside. I mean, there's all kinds of problems with that song, as we've discovered in the
That one got canceled last year. Yeah, that one got completely canceled last year.
Again, not a Christmas song. It's a winter song.
I mean, I want you to know that I hear you. I think it's important that you know that I'm aside from these cans on my ears.
I hear you.
I do
but I'm not going to do squat about it. Yeah,
I understand your frustration.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of some other ones that are very, very, very winter oriented.
And I'm not saying that I love them and I want to hear them all the time, because for most of the songs that are being played on the radio by December 25th, I'm done with them. But why are these winter songs stopping December 26th? When they have nothing to do with Christmas. They're just about winter. Winter continues on.
I got to say, with the elections and everything coming up and right after the first of the year, I feel there's no better time for you to introduce this as part of like some sort of a legislation or talk to a local congressman. If you want to start making those emails or those calls now, they really appreciate that right before Christmas, So
yeah.
I mean, I'll get you that list.
Okay. Jimmy, do you know anybody?
I have been sitting here. This warms my shrunken Grinch heart so much, because I have a specific playlist that is J-Dub's Tolerable Christmas list for my family, because they start playing Christmas music, probably around, August. And they get a little early and I just get burned out. And so I've got a list. There's like 6 songs on it probably. And they're pretty basic, traditional, whatever type songs. But they're like, okay, my overstimulated brain can tolerate these a little bit longer. So I hear your pain. I appreciate from one curmudgeon to another. I want to help, in any way I can to help spread the gospel of limitation of songs and their specific purpose. And I can't wait for at Nate being in winter in Houston, we're going to be singing Winter Wonderland, because I'm sure it'll be nice and snowy and have those all those sleigh bells on the horse-drawn carriages there.
I'm so happy that we've got this kicking off this episode of the therapy session of the Real Deal Landman Show. I do agree. I don't have as much problem with the songs or the lyrics or them being played before or after like Christmas. My thing is the timing beforehand of, just like Jimmy, what you said is starting in August, or I'll walk into, let's say Lowe's is my go-to of, I'll go to Lowe's and you can always see the changing of the seasons in Lowe's is 100% accurate on where the sales cycle is and where they're trying to really start getting everything going. And so, we're midway through October and they have sold out now of all of their, their Halloween decor. And they're like, well, what do we do? Just toss that playlist up there. Let's start doing Frosty the Snowman, get those blow ups out on the side. And they're just rocking and rolling with it. And that I cannot abide by anymore in my life.
Yeah. The holiday creep is what they call that, right?
That's right.
Where the holidays are slowly creeping earlier. And I mean, I for one am shocked and appalled that corporations in this day would try to maximize profits by selling that stuff earlier. I mean, I just, I don't know what the world's coming to.
It's only about money.
Color me shocked.
That's right.
Color me absolutely shocked. I had no idea they were into that right now, but
it was a number of years ago. I was a pretty early adopter in the online shopping, so that way I didn't have to go to the stores around this time of year. And then last year I forgot to get stocking stuffers until kind of the last minute to get some stuff for my wife and 2 daughters. And it was very much like the George Costanza talking about Festivus and where he came about when he was, landing blows upon his opponent to get. I almost got in a fist fight at both an Ulta and a gosh, what was it? It was like an Old Navy there, and I was like, this is terrible. I'm gonna go to prison for like lip gloss or something here. Like, this is terrible.
Have you both got your shopping done for Christmas?
I think I'm about done.
Yeah,
I think I got it.
I am. While we're talking about the Christmas thing, just to keep beating this, one topic to death. One thing I do try to apostolize a bit is what in our family we refer to as Oprah Christmas, and it is a thing that is really, really good for adults to do. Is the Oprah Christmas, right? And so if you have family members who you're like, look, I only see you once a year. I know you, but I kind of don't know you that well. And I don't have to pretend like I want to get to know you and have a real relationship with you, random uncle. I'd rather just get you something, but I can't get this person a very personalized gift and then get you, Taco Bell gift cards or something, right? Like, you need it to be kind of on par with each other. It's awkward that way. Or you'll do Secret Santa. Inevitably, you get something really fantastic, and then you get some awful something, right?
Absolutely.
What we do is we just figure out how many adults are going to be there. So you've got 12 or 10 or 13 or however many people are all the parents that are going to be going there. And you set a limit before, and you say it's $25. And then I buy 13 of the exact same item that I want. And it's $25, and it's a thing that I want, and I buy it, and then I buy 13 of them. I wrap one of them, and we put them in a pile, and then everybody opens it up one at a time, and then it's like Oprah, and you get an umbrella, and you get an umbrella, everybody gets an umbrella, or whatever. And so it is the greatest thing. It saves so much mental bandwidth of thinking about this random person that you don't know where they're adults. If they wanted something, they would have bought it themselves over the last year, right?
Amen. Exactly right. It is the thought process like that has absolutely elevated you in the landman world and to become landman of the year a couple years ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
What sort of cash and prizes did they give away with that thing?
I think it's a strong 5% override in NAPE.
Yeah, I believe that.
Really? I know you had them last.
Yeah.
Just come up there. So I'm just waiting to get the paperwork. I'm waiting on that.
Waiting on the paperwork back to give the listeners a little bit of a background. Like, we are so fortunate today to have Jimmy Wright in today. He is the president and CEO of JW Enterprises, and that is out of Austin, correct?
Yeah.
Out of Austin. He has spent a lot of time in Midland in his life, so he is very fresh. He can give us a lot of good in-depth information about the show today. What we just really want to know is we want to tell us a little bit about what got you into the energy industry to be able to get so involved with NAPE and NARO and all of those different things. Just give everybody a little background on who you are and how you got to be where you are today.
Sure.
Is
Absolutely.
Jimmy your given name?
It is not. I'm a James.
Okay.
I'm a James, and most Jameses have transitioned at the age I am from Jimmy to either Jim. That's the natural progression, is to go Jimmy, Jim, James. And for all of your listeners out there, I had a nickname when I was younger, when I was a very young boy, was Jimmers. And so I went from Jimmers to Jimmy, and I just stayed there. So,
and what's the next one? Do we go to Jimothy?
I appreciate that. Yeah, Jimothy. That's, I think, Jimifer is another one.
Jimothy, Jimifer. Well, just let us know whenever we get to see that LinkedIn change.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So getting into the business, I went to school at Southwestern University, which is a small liberal arts college in Georgetown, just north of Austin. And I'm from Amarillo originally, but I did not know anything about the oil and gas business except that you put them in your car, right? My dad was a mechanic and a helicopter mechanic, and so I really did not have any exposure or experience with that. And so when I was in college, I joined the Army National Guard, and when I came back from my basic training and advanced training, I had one more year of college left, and that's when I met my now wife, who her father is a landman. And he just said, "Oh, this will be a great fit for you. You've got the right kind of personality, that kind of thing." And I thought I'd go to law school. I'd been student body president, so I'd worked for law firms and done that kind of stuff. But then you're in the Army and you look around, you're like broke. And I was like, man, this is kind of a bad, ROI decision kind of a thing. And so then I started doing field land work. And started my degrees. I say my undergraduate degrees are in Spanish and political science. And so the political science degree taught me to ask, would you like fries with that? And my Spanish degree was ¿Quieres papas fritas con esto? So I was able to work at any McDonald's up and down the Mexican border if I needed to. Was kind of the joke I like to say, but it really, when I started doing land work, going to those types of schools, they just teach you how to think and write and read and that kind of liberal arts stuff, and being able to take those skills and just be like, well, I don't know anything about what I'm doing here, and I'm just willing to admit that and just say, all right, teach me what I need to know how to do this stuff. And I think I got a day rate was like $150 a day, and I felt so rich after leaving the Army. I called my now wife, and I was like, "Baby, we're going to Sizzler. We're living it like, oh my God, I'm gonna get $150 a day. That's crazy, And so started doing that for a while, and then I moved in house, and we moved to Midland, where my wife is from. And
was all the field land work that you were doing, was that like grabbing title, or was that going to courthouses, or was that out in the field and all in West Texas? Is this right?
Yeah, great question. So I did very little field land work at that time out in West Texas. I was mostly South Texas or East Texas.
It makes me think that as you were starting kind of working on with NARO, you had that mindset of these are the things that a royalty owner needs. Did it kind of go hand in hand a little bit, or did that was that where a little of the thought process came from?
I was in house. I always felt like the landman's job is to be the liaison between parties, and that is much more of an in-house kind of function in theory than the field person. Now, the leasing agent type person, they're interacting with the public, they're interacting with the mineral owner. But most title landmen, the best ones are kind of like, the girl with the dragon tattoo type folks, where you're like, I don't want them having to talk to another person. They just lock in and just, they're in the zone, and all they do is, they work with the numbers and the flow of title, right? They want that you want them binary thinking, like if it's not 100% right, it's 100% wrong. It's like you get the weirdest stories, and you're reading these documents, and you're like, okay, what were they trying to do here? And who is this person? You start talking to folks, and then they talk about the second family that grandpa had, and all these just completely outlandish, weird stories. It's like, okay, well, okay, great. Like now we got to figure what that does to the ownership of the document. So that's kind been more my experience.
Early on with Chesapeake, we would get call after call after call of people that were just absolutely desperate for information. And to make sure that we were utilizing the landman's time, appropriately, we had to arm ourselves with the absolute best way of being able to take care of those, those questions and be able to respond as well. But to be able to have a group like NARO, which we went to just about every year, like the national conference, and to be able to see firsthand a lot of those people that were so, eager to absorb information and to learn how to, even figure a royalty rate, or to be able to, like you said, you've got dad's second family over here, and for them to start clicking and being able to understand, oh, the thing that I've been yelling at the person on the phone for the last 6 months, that actually was my fault. Like I needed to get a little bit more information or talk to these different people and get everything out. And then once they started being able to kind of build that, chain of title or build that out and see how it was structured, it was pretty darn fun to see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel whenever they were like, we got it all in, it's submitted, and our royalty check is correct, and it's, on the next check run. And I really, honestly, I enjoyed all the conferences of NARO that I went to.
Thank you. We're trying to really kind of serve that, because it's a really complicated relationship between the landowner, surface owner, mineral owner, royalty owner, operator, subcontractors. Again, I know we're going to talk about this with, the show and all those things, but it's really complicated, these relationships, and nobody likes being generalized. But the reality is there are a lot of things that happen that both sides of these and all parties in these relationships can feel like, hey, I'm not being heard, I'm getting totally dismissed, or I'm being totally attacked, and I'm not getting any credit. And I've tried really hard to kind of say, look, there's it's not nearly as often that it's a nefarious thing that the oil company is trying to totally swindle you out of this thing. Like there are bad actors for sure. You got to be careful of. Typically it's a volume and process problem that most operators I've worked with that they're dealing with. It's not that they're overtly trying to take advantage of unsuspecting, mineral owners, but it is one of the few industries that is seller beware. It is not buyer beware. You are the mineral owner. You get a random letter one day saying that they want to pay you, $150,000 for these minerals that pay you $50 a month. You're like, absolutely, I'd love to. Yes, thank you so much. Well, then you sell it off, and little did you know that there was, $7 million in suspense, and there were 13 new horizontal wells on it, and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, gosh, that's a really unfortunate series of events that if the person had been educated and known what to look into, they wouldn't have this bad taste in their mouth about, now the profession and, well, that's what landmen do. And that's, they're snakes and they're trying to swindle us and, those things.
It always did a really good job of exactly what you're saying of, I think the oil and gas companies, there is that feeling of, butting heads of if the landowner feels that they've been taken advantage of, it is an uphill battle to try to rebuild that relationship. And we always said, I remember, if you get good news or if you get good, service by something, you'll always tell one or two people, maybe. If you get bad service or if you have a bad taste in your mouth with a group, you're going to tell 9 to 10. And it's just like reviews on Amazon or anything else. So many people just want to dunk on something else. But giving, positive praise is very difficult sometimes. And I think NARO does a good job of, showing, hey, these guys aren't the enemy. Like it's not you versus them. It's you all working together to be able to have a good relationship going forward for the life of the lease, and just keeping the communication channels wide open. And I saw it at Chesapeake of how much they wanted to work alongside NARO to make sure that, we were doing everything that we could to give you guys the most updated information, especially with like our company, just to help the royalty owners out and just to make them feel more comfortable. And it was really good of sometimes the message delivered by a large company is received a lot differently than a third party like you guys. There's a much stronger form of trust there, of where it's like it's a third party that's like, hey, we've looked at the information, we've analyzed it, we've been able to put this together, and we're going to be able to help you. So I think it's a fantastic organization.
So I went on jwententerprises.com not too long ago. Looks like you've added some new things and have enhanced your website a little bit. And when I went to it, the first thing that popped up was a message, a gray box that said, "Oh, expletive, I'm dead. Ready to receive your digital copy? Please provide your email address and we will send you our free ebook." So,
Yeah.
Jimmy, are you an author?
Well, allegedly, that's what they say. So that's so random that you brought that up.
You didn't know you were an author.
I have, so I had a number of clients who have brought up, hey, gosh, this story happens all the time. So right now, my background, I did that kind of field land work that we talked about before. Then I went in-house for a number of years, worked for a bunch of different operators, and then we went off on our own. And so now our business is almost exclusively helping mineral owners manage their assets. And we have the majority of clients who choose us, as opposed to other types of firms like us, are in some level of this kind of story. They want to be involved in it. They want to learn what they're dealing with. And they come to us and say, "Jimmy, I've got this magic box that spits out money every month, and it's called a mailbox. I don't know where this comes from. I don't know anything about it. I don't know if I'm being paid properly. Grandpa was a bootlegger back in the 1920s, and so he drove around and was paid in minerals all over the place. And now this stuff shows up, and I have no idea if this is right or wrong. Should I sign this? Whatever." And so what we did was we put together a little booklet that is designed to help people, look, if you're going to go put forth all this time and effort to find this stuff out, like, write it down somewhere. And then this can be the one book that you tell your kids or whoever's going to be the executor of your estate, whatever, hey, look, this is the booklet that has all the stuff. It says where my copy of my birth certificate is, and here's where the copies of my insurance is kept, and here's all my bank account information, and here's my passwords to be able to log in, and delete my browser history or whatever, kind of whatever your needs are, right?
That's the big one.
Because, you've got this stuff happens, and it's like, I've seen so many people that have dealt with that where it is, specific to the mineral space, but realistically, anytime somebody is dealing with that kind of estate planning, transfer of assets, like, they're dealing with grief, they're dealing with a lot of emotional things right in that moment. And the last thing they need to be is like, oh my gosh, well, if I need to turn off this auto pay, for Dad's Adobe, subscription, how do I do that? Or whatever, like, it's just the nuts and bolts of managing your assets. So so fill that out, and I'll send you a digital copy of it. I've got some print ones here. I might be able to trade you a printed one for a Landman, a Real Deal hat.
Hey, if you get one before I do, there's gonna be words spoken.
We might, I'm just thinking of collaboration. It could be like, oh, expletive, it's the Real Deal Landman.
Pretty good crossover episode. I like it.
Right. It's a mashup. Yeah.
No, I definitely like it. No, I think there was always something too with it amazed me of how many people, and I mean sharp people, would go through and very well versed with oil and gas and knowing where minerals were going and knowing how they had everything split out. But then they pass away and there hasn't been any communication with the next in line of where you're going to find all this information. And you're not kidding. That was a sense of real frustration when people would call in. You'd say, we need a signed copy of, like a deed. We need a signed copy of a death certificate. We need all of these things. And just like you said, they're going through a lot of grief. They're going through a lot of things, and having to now bird dog down these different files, that's the last thing that they want to be doing. And so it's a really nice thing for parents and for grandparents to be able to do, is to help with that organization. And I think it's really cool that a lot of kind of this generation is starting to look more into like the digital way to do it and the way to plan ahead, if nothing else.
Yeah, I talk with, I give a number of speeches around country. And one of the things when I'm talking about like managing your assets and building these processes is, there's this whole generational transfer of wealth that's occurring. And it is from a generation of people who traditionally were taught, well, we don't talk about money. Or we don't, if I tell my kids I've got this passive income, then they're going to think they're going to be trust fund babies and they'll never work for themselves. Or they have these other kinds of concerns that it's like, well, the thing I always say to counter those points is, was it difficult for you to first learn about all these assets you had when, they got dumped on you? And people are like, oh my God, yes, it was awful. It was this, that, and the other. And I was like, don't you love your kids enough to not do that to them? Like, that's the other side of it. And it's like kind of a guilt shaming moment for them to be like, oh, you're right. Like, I should get this better I should want it better for my children. And, maybe that gets the wheels turning for them to be like, okay, well, just because I had to do this difficult way of cobbling this all together, I don't have to make it that difficult for my children. And they maybe don't want to, spend the time, and they don't have the emotional connection to these assets the way I did, because I went to grandpa's farm and I saw it there and I sat it with his table and those types of things. It's like, they're like, these are just an asset. This is just like inheriting, dividend stocks in a company that you don't know anything about, or a storage unit that spits out cash flow and it's in a place you've never been. Or it's like, yeah, it's a thing that was really, really important generations ago, but I just see this as a thing that makes me money.
I need to learn about this too. And so I remember talking to quite a few people that are like, I'm going to be the one inheriting this, and I need to have some sort of a direct understanding. And NARO did a good job of kind of holding their hand and walking them through the processes. So whenever, that did happen and the transfer of ownership did go to them, they were so much more prepared. And I mean, that's what I hope a lot more of kind of a younger generation really look to. And NARO's a good start.
I agree. I've been really happy to help them out.
It's wonderful.
Well, speaking of mo money, mo problems, should we jump into the show?
We should jump into the show.
Let's do it.
Jimmy, so far we're more than halfway through this this whole thing. What have your thoughts been like? Just high-arcing thoughts. What are you thinking of Landman, the show overall?
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to do the as my therapist tells me, like, you're supposed to sandwich good news, then bad news, then good news, right? So I'm gonna try my best.
That's right.
Do that. So I think the good news is, as you guys have talked about a lot, this is definitely bringing the term of what we do, the different facets of our profession to a conversation. I love that. I love that there's opportunity to talk about it. I think that just like any other show, it is leaning on the excitement parts to be able to, draw in the viewer separate from the actual active content of what a landman's job really is. But I think that's, again, I don't watch Law and Order and expect that's what a detective's life is really like, or, Grey's Anatomy isn't what it's really like in every hospital out there kind of situation. So there's a little bit of that that's incumbent upon the viewer to kind of be like, okay, this is, tongue in cheek, got to take it with a grain of salt type of thing. I think the things that I think really I see as problematic that I don't love are more, probably more content related to the relationships between all the players in the show. And so I have a really hard time not letting that cloud my vision of it because, Billy Bob's character is, as we know in the industry, kind of a mashup of about 45 different employees' jobs in one person. And it's in these 2 weeks have had, every possible like crazy story that anybody that's ever had that job maybe plucked it out of their memory. And it's like, it all happens to this one guy on this one field, whatever, kind of one situation. And I really dislike the characterization of most of the women characters. I feel like it's pretty lazy writing, candidly, only because I don't like the they're just kind of getting siloed into this. Either, you're hypersexualized or you are just, you're hysterical and you can't possibly know what's going on. You're this chaotic person, or you're this really aggressive, mean, heartless attorney who's just gonna cut anybody's throat at any turn. Or you're Demi Moore, who, like, I was very glad that this is the first episode she showed up that she wasn't wet, either swimming or coming out of the shower or whatever. And she's like, "Oh, I'll make you some coffee." Like, there we go. It's like,
she had a great accent, though. I mean, she's really putting her heart into it. You can tell.
So, and, obviously they're making it seem like it's the most dangerous place. There are no safety standards ever.
That's just too dangerous. We got to get Cooper out of it. He's not going to survive. He ain't mean enough. He ain't mean enough.
He ain't mean enough to survive.
No, I really had high hopes. I thought, you hit it just on the head on every one of those things. I was talking to my wife while we were sitting there, and I was like, how many episodes in a row? I was like, we're 6 in. I was like, do you think this will be the first episode that we don't see like a girl in her bathing suit? And she was like, there's not a chance. Like, it's totally happening like 5 minutes into it. So yeah, we've got a Taylor Sheridan show. And just like you said, just fictionalized in so many different ways, stereotyped in a lot of different ways. And I feel like that is hitting a certain audience that is really enjoying this. And for us that are in the profession, that gives us an opportunity to talk like we are today, talk about what's right, talk about what's wrong, and give a really strong look at a show that is about our industry. So I'm right with you. Over this weekend, I went to a Christmas party and there was a guy there. I cannot say that this was the quote it does not come from me. It came from him because it was too beautiful. And he said, I wrote down part of it. He said, I totally can understand that they're fictionalizing a lot of this. And he said, I am absolutely horrified and angry beyond belief that we show these pad sites and we show these wells. And he said, if this was really in Midland, there would be plastic HEB bags stuck to the side of the wells everywhere.
Yeah.
And he said, I saw that, and he said it was a pristine pad site, and he said, I just was turn it off. Yeah. This is not it.
I cannot suspend my disbelief.
Can't
Absolutely
do it.
Not.
Cannot do it.
But there was a handful. So my wife grew up in Midland, and I lived in Midland for a number of years, about 12, 13 years. And it's fantastic and it's great. And there's some cool shots they've had there that are legitimate places that I'm sure they showed, and people are like, oh, whatever, that's not real. But like the mural on the side of the Endeavor building downtown with the pump jacks on it, like, that is real. If you've never been to Midland, that lives there all the time. That is not like they made it for the show.
That's right.
Again, this was I've been in Midland or in Austin about 7.5 years now. So I don't know what it's still happening out there, but the the coffee shop with the girls in bikinis that are lined up or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
that was the thing that was going to be happening when, again, a number of years ago, the boom, it was happening. I think it might have been in Monaghan's or
No
out in
kidding.
Pecos, but it was like a real kind of a thing that was coming to, maybe it was West Odessa. I don't know where it was, but it was like a real, like, again, that's totally like, oh, that's awful. That's terrible. I can't believe it happened. And it also kind of
did. If we know anything about the bikini baristas, they made some absolutely fantastic donuts.
I'm sure it was,
absolutely raved about it.
I can only imagine being over a fry cook situation in your swimsuit, right? I mean, like, what could go wrong?
What could go wrong? That's right.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. We started the episode out. Demi Moore, I mean, they handed her the script this episode, and they're like, guess what? You've got lines. And she just did a circle around the parking lot, I imagine. Tommy's driving to Fort Worth with his wife, ex-wife, newly rekindled relationship, right? And he's going to Monty. She's going to Victor's to break up with him. As they're going to these different places, he gets into Monty's beautiful house in Fort Worth, I guess. He's missed a lot of calls because they found Cooper, and Cooper refuses to die at this point. Like, I mean, he's been there 2 weeks. And to what you said earlier, we have established, and they absolutely said it. They said it's been 2 weeks of just absolutely bat insane action for 2 weeks, and we've got a lot going on there. So Cooper has been beat up. He's been attempted blow up. He's had a friend lose a finger. He's had his father lose a finger. Like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in a 2 week span, but now he is in the hospital. And so instead of Monty putting him on his private jet and getting him back there in 30 minutes, he's just like, get back in your car and you're
I mean, my only question about that first visit is that if I ever achieve that kind of wealth, am I obligated to decorate my house that way?
You are. It's all Chihuly glass, I think.
Okay, you have to do that then. Okay.
Yeah.
And we've kind of established MTEX doesn't seem like it's that big of a player out there, right?
So it seems to me like this is kind of one of those groups that has found its own little pockets of area there. But then if you remember that Tommy talks about how, he's got $500,000 in debt, and he tried his hand at it and didn't work out. But John Hamm's character had been successful because he basically sold at a high and then bought it back for 10 cents on the dollar and those kinds of things. And so, he's got some mineral right packages to help supplement that income that is like, it's just a really interesting dynamic of, okay, these people are kind of a water flood focused group is what it seems like so far, because they're working over old wells to try to reestablish, 250 barrel a day producers, which are fantastic if you're reworking it at a $70,000 or maybe $150,000 rework job. That's awesome to, wring the sponge a little bit more and get some more out of it. But, nobody's going to be drilling an $8 million horizontal well and be like, oh my gosh, it came out at, 250 barrels a day. They'd be like, all right, all the technical people are fired. Like, get out of here. What are you doing?
That's right.
Like every geologist and engineer and reservoir person, they'd be like, you're gone.
You're gone. It's good to see. I'm just happy Monty's doing so well. He's gonna struggle a little bit with these $250,000 payments to the family. Because we're halfway through the season again, and I imagine there's going to be lots more payments to lots more families by the time we're done with this. And the cartel, too. So that was the reason why Tommy went. He talked about the cartel for a little bit, but then this was the episode that I think I actually kind of liked the most. And I liked it because we know the cartel is always going to be there. We know that's like a big portion of the show, but I like that they had the opportunity to kind of push off Cooper being hurt, but they kind of made the family the center focus. And I thought that was kind of cool. So Angela, in being the family woman that she is, drives to her husband's house to call it off. And lo and behold, hey, he's already left her. So that was like, I feel like Victor saw the writing on the wall. And also, we talked about it in an earlier episode where we were like, we've met her now a few episodes. There's got to be that huge sense of relief for him of where he's like, oh, yeah, no, this is fine. No, this is fine. But the problem with this was she walks into the house where her key doesn't even work and immediately is hit with that infidelity clause, to which she said, it's not adultery. He's my ex-husband. So she ends up losing 4 houses, a joint bank account, her cars, but thank goodness not the Bentley because it was a gift. They do depreciate horribly, though. That's the thing. I looked that one up. That's a Bentley Continental for anybody that cares. We all know that because Jerris has driven one since 2016. So I think they start off at about $240,000. The one she's driving,
it's like 238.
238. So
yeah,
I mean, almost if we're doing apples to apples, we're saying Angela's car is basically the equivalent of the payment for one of the guys that got exploded in episode 2, legally speaking. But if it's anything around 2015, those depreciate to about $77,000. So, I don't know. I hate the depreciation on these things, and they're only getting 11 city and 16 highway. So I mean, come on.
I mean, I literally was talking with my daughters. They were walking through and this was happening, and it was like, she's like, do I get my Bentley or whatever? She just signs it and walks off. And I was like, that was like the most like, okay, girls, just so you know, don't ever sign a legal document without your attorney reviewing it ever. Anything like maybe like the Verizon wireless contract, because you can't negotiate that, but don't do that. And I was like, yeah, she gave up, whatever, probably $30 million worth of property to keep this $300,000 brand new car. I don't think Angela makes a lot of decisions based on long-term IRR and,
no, she does not,
value appreciation. I'm just saying, I think she runs a little hot under the collar and doesn't, she makes impulsive decisions at times.
She does. And as she was leaving, she saw the new Mrs. Victor, who was there at the house, and didn't really bother her too much aside from the age, factor. But in that impulsive last moment, she could have done anything under the sun, and she steals 2 bottles of wine. So Cooper's in the hospital. They said he is in Midland General.
So to my knowledge, there is no Midland General.
Okay, that's good to know.
That's a fictional name. And maybe it's been renamed that, but the Midland, there's the main hospital in Midland, and then there's the main hospital in Odessa.
They put Midland General in their GPS, and they got there nonetheless, but not before Ainsley and Dale and the rest of the crew that we've come to know and love has already showed up at the hospital, just making sure he's still alive. Ariana says it's a little harder to explain what their relationship is. They get to go in the room and they're talking to Cooper. Ainsley doesn't care about the mess that he's in, more that she's missing the patch party, which I totally understand. That's devastating news for Ainsley. I hate that she missed out on it. About this time, Tommy and the rest of them get there. And Tommy, this was the part that I probably liked the most, and it's mainly because of Billy Bob's acting. He plays like a hard ass really well, like when he's delivering lines. And I loved the line that he had of where he said, it was something along the lines of, I'm not talking to you as your dad, I'm talking to you as the general manager of an oil and gas company. And because he was really thinking it out of, this isn't just my son that was attacked. This was somebody in our company. And this is a huge issue. And we've got to nip this thing in the bud so this doesn't happen again.
The part that kind of gets me about the turmoil and conflict in the main camp, and that concept of, okay, you're the employer or you're the contractor who has that happening in your space. And again, this can't be expressed or shown at all in the show, but all of these people none of them would be employees of MTEX, right? Like Billy Bob is the only person who would be the employee of MTEX, and maybe the attorney that's living with him, and that attorney can't have an office apparently. he has to work from home. Like, that's how the business works, is like, okay, you're going to have a different group that owns the man camp, and you're going to have these guys that are pumpers work for this group. And I mean, there's going to be like 6 layers of stuff there that
That's right.
is just for liability purposes and different, again, we're getting into the super nerdy real deal of it. Right?
I stinking love it. I'm telling you, like, it's stuff like that. Yeah, it's things like that that only the people that have worked in these situations totally recognize. And yeah, Tommy in his scenario is the overarching over so many different roles, and he's, like we talked about in past episodes, he's helping make, assign different rig crews, and he's assigning everything out. He's kind of the puppet master for the whole thing. So he's ticked off. Tommy tells the sheriff, he's like, hey, we're going out, we're taking care of this. And he says, we're going to meet at Manuel and Antonio's little outpost. And he tells the sheriff of the town, he says, give us a 10-minute head start. So he wants to take care of this himself. So they run out there. And I do want to say, of where I've talked in the past, Jerris, this would be the part where I'd say, and this would be the 3rd time I saw an American Petroleum Institute commercial. I don't want to tell you guys my financial situation, but I am the type of guy who got really tired of commercials. And so I bumped that subscription up. No more commercials. Yeah, I don't want to brag. I mean,
Sounds like you're bragging.
I'm just a man.
bragging.
I put on my $800 pair of pants on one leg at a time, like the rest of us. So I just am sitting there. I do not know if we had the API commercials, but we blew through this episode. They did. You saw one.
Yeah, it's the same one over and over.
So from these last few minutes, there were 2 questions that came to my mind. One is, are all oil field people considered to be hillbillies? And then the other question being, is there really such thing as an oil field blacklist that you can be added to and you never get to work for anybody again?
I'd say the answer to your first question is no, clearly. But I will say that I don't remember what episode it was where Tommy makes a comment about, there are not a lot of industries where a felon can make 6 figures.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are, in times of, it's a boom and bust, and in times of real boom, there's shortages at every part along the supply chain. And so I remember when we lived out in the patch, when we were out there, it was, the main thing that was a real problem was commercial water haulers. So that was when fracking came on. And so there's this huge volume of water that was getting moved, and they did not have enough CDL truck drivers to haul the water to the disposal sites, right? And so there were a ton of accidents on, 349 going up back and forth between Rankin and Midland and out in the oil field, because you have 19-year-old kids that could make all this money being a brand new truck driver. So that's the easiest barrier of entry for people to get into it. Kind of frankly, like field landmen, if it's a land rush, it's a lot easier to become a field landman when there's a big hunt play coming into an area and you're willing to go there. Come on, we'll get you on a crew, kind of a situation. And the people I've talked to when I worked at Intergen and other, Callan, other in-house operating groups, who I would consider like the foreman, like the Tommy character at those organizations, they knew all the people, all these different organizations. And so there could be a real, hey, this person, has done something so egregious that they will never be able to get hired back on. I think there probably is a lot more of that in that space that we as landmen don't know about, but there are people in our profession that I think have, earned reputations of, I don't want to say unemployability, because if somebody doesn't know or well, they got the lease, so we'll buy it. We want it so bad. We don't care that they're a scoundrel, however they got it. But there are people that are on my little black book of like, I don't do deals with them because I know, either firsthand or secondhand some things that I'm like, well, no, thank you. I'm not out trying to destroy them or anything, but like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do anything with you.
No, that makes sense. I agree with everything that you said. I always laughed at the oil field trash stickers on the back of their car. And I always didn't like that because I was like, hey, we're all part of the same company. And like I always took pride in, working for a good operator. And I hoped that everybody felt the same way. And I do think that they meant that as a sense of pride that they worked in the field. I totally get that. But like, man, maybe I was wrong. Maybe they're all talking about the HEB bags at the thing. As far as blacklisting go, I totally agree with Jimmy. Like, I think in every line, you can talk to a supervisor, you can talk to some sort of an upper level manager, and they're going to know some of the people that they've been connected to that they'd never put on a pad, they'd never put in an office, and they probably still wouldn't say a bad word about them, but they know who they want to work with, and that might not fall into their league. So I totally get that too.
Well, I've got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
I talked to Jerris about this previously, so I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Like, do you think that in the rest of the show there will come a time where there will be a dramatic conflict of some kind that would be kind of like a landman deal trade kind of conflict? Like, we're both trying to get this lease between this other party, and so I've got to negotiate a better deal with you than what Tommy does. There has not been any real discussion of like competitors to MTechs.
It kind of depends on what the nature of their business is. As you alluded to earlier, it could be that, MTechs bought a legacy producing field and their entire operation is just enhancing production that's out of that. And if that's the case, then it's very likely that they're not going to have competitive things that they're dealing with other operators, or we may not see that landman to landman type interaction. It is interesting that you bring that up in general because, as this show continues and we talk to people outside of the profession or outside the industry, and they're getting to know what a landman is, either through the TV show or AI bots or Wikipedia, that title aspect and interacting with landowners aspect is usually the main thing that people hear about. There's not, even people who have made big careers out of that don't realize what the complexities of that in-house landman job is. There's a lot of people in the landman profession that don't know what other landmen do. Is as finite and as niche as our profession sounds, it's really very broad in the types of complexities and things that you can deal with on a daily basis. I guess we'll just have to stay tuned and find out what happens.
And Jimmy, my answer to that would be, I hope at some point, and I'm saying like episode 9, episode 10, if this is a 10 episode season, I hope it's like Tommy at the bottom of like a, I don't know, like really industrial well, and there's a bomb at the bottom of it with the ticking down, like it's the old red, or like it's going down, and it's going down, and he's got 30 seconds. And I hope it's like he has to find the cessation of production clause within the lease, and he finds it at 2, and that's what stops the clock. I love the idea that it could come down out of even a land, like a lease negotiation, but it could put his skills as a negotiator on the table of negotiating something with the cartel, or that experience of being able to do this his entire career. He is able to save his son, save somebody's life because of the negotiation that he can put through, and how he can do it better than everybody else.
I could see there being like a trespass issue or something like that. Like, our lease is valid and yours isn't. And, we've got questions of title again, but that's super granular. And but that gets into the kind of stuff that, like, you know, these other shows, Boston Legal, Law and Order, they always have some element of like some really specific legal component that could happen. And it's like, yeah, that happens in our world all the time. And
I liked a little hint at one of whenever they were talking about the plane landing, when he was talking to the cartel in the last episode, and the cartel was like, you can't do anything on this road or whatever. You shouldn't have been out there. And he's like, whenever you signed that lease and we were going through here, like, that's a road that you put on your property. Like, we can use that road because that's technically like us now. Like, that we signed the lease and you signed that over to us. You get to still drive on it, obviously, because it's yours, but we have rights to it as well. And I thought that was pretty well.
Well, and there was that part, I don't know, probably episode 1 or 2, that I have a lot of mixed feelings about, specifically because of my involvement with NARO and the line of work that I'm in right now with my clients, where, you know, he's the attorney is trying to negotiate the surface damages for the fire with the rancher. And then, you know, Billy Bob says, I'll pay you for a solar lease instead. And, you know, the guy's like, I'm offended by your language. And then Billy Bob, and that's another thing that I really expect to get viral. And I was talking about this at the AAPL Board of Directors meeting last weekend or 2 weekends ago, was like, that is unfortunately how many royalty and mineral owners think landmen see them. Is, what are you complaining about? Just shut up and take the free money and just be happy that I'm even willing to come show up here.
You're right.
And that was a concern I expressed to them, was like, guys, I think we're supposed to be the liaisons here. And that kind of attitude and perspective is one that could be really dangerous for our profession. If people latch onto that and say, like, see, they just come in and salt the earth and take whatever they want and move on. And, you know, that's a concern I have. But, you know, there's a certain element of where it's talking about that, where it's like, well, you know, if you hadn't have outsourced this to us, as with our expertise and our willingness to risk capital to drill those wells on your land in the 50s, you would have probably lost the farm and you would have lost the ranch. And, you know, you get, you know, $2 million a year free. So congratulations. Like, that's awesome. Like, that should be a blessing. And it's got some administrative burden, but you gave up some of these rights when you know, engaged in that contract. And again, it goes back to the seller beware. Like, well, Grandpa signed something he didn't know. I'm like, I'm really sorry. Like, you know, like, there was a certain element of, or maybe that was the best deal he could have gotten. And now you've got 3 generations of free money now. I mean, it's complicated. It's a multifaceted topic.
It definitely is. No, very, very well spoken, Jimmy. That's fantastic.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
last line of the show was, I got to get my boy out of here. He ain't mean enough for this place. We talked about that a little bit. I think there's no better way to really wrap up the show than, you know, he ain't mean enough for this place. Are we at 10,000 yet? Is what I needed to know from you.
We're a little shy from 10,000.
We're a little shy.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
if there's any one thing that a landman would be good at, it's probably figuring out a way to make polish it up to look a lot better than it really is, right?
That's exactly right. Well, Jimmy, before we go, do you want to give a plug to anything that you're doing?
I highly encourage everybody to get involved with NARO. I'm currently serving as the foundation president. They've got all kinds of fantastic opportunities to meet people. I would love to coordinate with folks that are interested in helping that organization out. You know, JW, again, we're really focused right now on helping mineral owners, you know, try to serve that kind of in-between space. So if there's anything we can do to help you guys out, that's something that we're kind of focusing our efforts on. But I really appreciate you guys doing the podcast. Thank you so much for bringing me on. I'll send Jerris my payment for my hat, and I will buy one for you, Drew, because I know Jerris.
I appreciate it. It's
you know,
what's called cash light right now.
I mean, I get it, buddy. I'm happy to you know, do my part of the lifting.
I'm trying to just keep this economy rolling by spending as much for Christmas as I possibly can. So, you know, that and those $800 pants I mentioned earlier, you know.
Just
Just gotta put that in there whenever you can.
That's exactly right. This has been another episode of the Real Deal Landman Show. Thank you for listening. Subscribe, do all that other fun stuff, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.